This lion didn't die in battle. It rotted alive, from the inside out. Across Africa's deadliest plains, apex predators are falling, not to fangs but to fevers. Rabies, rot, brain parasites. Even the strongest are turning mad, starving or eating themselves alive. And sometimes, they take humans down with them. This is a journey into nature's most twisted battleground, where disease topples kings, predator turns on predator, and every death reshapes the wild. From savannas to swamps, we're going inside the rotting wild. But one disease did something no predator ever could. It rewrote the food chain. And what happened next was caught on camera. The savannah wakes with golden breath, its tall grasses whispering secrets to the morning wind. Light pours over the plains like molten amber, kissing the dust, the trees, and the fur of those who rule this wilderness. Somewhere beneath a thorny acacia, a lion stirs. A young male, thick-maned, scarred and raw from last night's fight. He lifts his head slowly, not like a king, but like an old man whose joints remember every war. The flies are already on him. Not feeding, yet, but circling, tasting the air with greedy delight. He had won. At least that's how it looked, when the roars stopped and the dust settled. His rival had limped off into the darkness, tail low, prideless. The victor claimed his territory, his females, his dominance. But now, in the hush of dawn, he bleeds. Not from the deep gash on his flank, but from the betrayal bubbling inside his own body. The wound had gone septic overnight, and here in the wild, infection doesn't wait politely behind a red line. It invades like a hyena swarm, fast, laughing, and without mercy. In the world of apex predators, strength is measured in teeth and muscle, but the real battlefield is far smaller, microscopic. A single claw slash, a torn ear, a bite mark on the leg, all invitations for bacterial warfare. Infections like Pastorella, Clostridium, and E. coli slip into broken skin and turn a victory into a slow-motion death. There are no antiseptics in the wild, no sutures, no sympathy. The rot sets in quietly. First comes swelling, then heat, then a smell that other lions recognize with chilling instinct. A scent that says, "This one is marked." That smell travels on the breeze now as the lion tries to rise. The gash on his thigh has thickened into a hot, pulsing crater. Flies land and drink. Insects lay eggs in the flesh. And soon, pale larvae writhe beneath the fur, eating him from the outside in. Myices, the infestation of living tissue by maggots, is a grotesque natural recycling system. It's common here and cruelly democratic. Even royalty is reduced to carrion. But perhaps the cruelest irony of all is this. The biggest killers of big cats are often not other big cats. They're wounds that never heal, deep bites that fester, a dislocated leg that leads to starvation, or a broken fang that turns every meal into agony. The wild doesn't do mercy, it does waiting. And when a predator is wounded, the waiting begins. Prey animals don't flee as fast. Rivals watch from the brush. Even scavengers, those grim opportunists, track the scent of vulnerability like sharks trailing blood in water. Not even the elusive leopards, masters of solitude and shadows, are immune. Their injuries are often hidden longer, tucked into canopies or the deep hush of rock crevices. A torn shoulder from a botched impala kill, a puncture wound from a vengeful warthog. These injuries rarely kill fast. Instead, they unravel the predator's most prized asset: stealth. A limping leopard makes too much noise, misses the pounce, falls from the tree. The silence that once made it deadly becomes a void it can no longer fill. It's easy to assume that these creatures, born into raw power, are immortal engines of muscle and instinct. But in truth, their lives are a balancing act on a blade's edge. For every glorious hunt and cinematic takedown, there is a hidden trail of suffering. Lions may roar to shake the sky, but they also whimper in the grass, licking abscesses and dragging festering limbs toward shade. Predators, it turns out, are not defined by how they kill, but by how long they can hold off being killed. By anything. One of the more chilling surprises in this narrative is how frequently wounds are inflicted not by prey, but by the predator's own kind. Coalition males turn on each other in bitter disputes. Siblings fight over fading dominance. Females defending cubs leave brutal bite marks on intruders. The ecosystem of apex predators is not a noble court of alpha kings. It's a savage democracy ruled by teeth, and the voting happens daily. Even after death, the story doesn't end. Carcasses of diseased or wounded lions are sometimes left untouched by others, rejected by scavengers who sense what the living could not. The body is cursed. Hyenas, usually eager to feast, circle cautiously. Vultures land and lift off, unsettled by something they can't explain. Disease echoes beyond the body. It leaves a trace in the air, a warning in the soil, a chapter in the scent history that all wild creatures read. But just when it seems infection always wins, nature writes a different ending. Some lions survive. They limp for weeks, open wounds crawling with maggots, and then somehow the rot clears. Flies, it turns out, are sometimes doctors too. In a twisted stroke of evolution, maggots can clean out necrotic flesh, eating the dead parts and sparing the healthy tissue. This maggot therapy, revolting to us, can be the unlikely savior of a lion that would otherwise rot from within. Nature is as brutal as it is bizarre. Sometimes, the same insects that signify death become agents of resurrection. In these cases, when the lion returns, scarred, lean but alive, he is different. Not just older or tougher, but transformed. His body now carries a history that others can smell. Some prides accept him again, others do not. He may become a nomad, dragging his survival like a shadow across the land, haunting the edges of territories, never fully king again, but never truly defeated. As the sun rises higher over the savannah, that young lion beneath the acacia finally collapses. His breath shallow, his eyes dulled, he has crossed an invisible line, from predator to patient, from ruler to ruin. Around him the world continues. Impalas graze, zebras bark, and hyenas laugh from a distance, their ears twitching with the anticipation of fate fulfilling its script. But this is just the beginning. Because in the wild, decay is not the end of the story. It's the start of a ripple, one that reaches scavengers, parasites, even the soil itself. What kills the lion does not disappear. It spreads, it infects, it teaches, and sometimes it comes for those who thought they were safe. Next, we journey into the realm of madness, where predators turn feral, foam-lipped, and unpredictable. In the land of the rabid, even kings lose their minds. The savannah doesn't need monsters. It makes its own. The heat of midday lies like a fever over the landscape, warping the horizon in shimmering waves. Acacia trees cast crooked shadows across cracked ochre earth, and the wind carries the lazy scent of dust, sun-baked dung, and old blood. Somewhere between the termite mounds and the dry riverbed, a figure staggers across the plains. At first glance, it's just a jackal, a wiry silhouette, lean and quick, the scavenger of Africa. But something is wrong. Its gait is broken, erratic. Foam clings to its lips like sea foam caught on black rocks. The eyes dart in unnatural spasms, glassy and frantic, as if something inside is trying to escape. This is not a hunt, it's a descent. Rabies is not nature's loudest killer, but it is one of the cruelest. It doesn't tear flesh or strike from the sky. It whispers patiently inside the blood, weaving madness neuron by neuron. Passed in a bite, it enters the body and begins a grotesque journey toward the brain. And when it gets there, it changes everything. A predator stops being a predator. It becomes a weapon. The jackal isn't the only one. Across the plains, the infection travels like gossip in a village. Quiet, invisible, but devastating once revealed. A hyena pack that tore apart a rabid, bat-eared fox 1 week earlier now moves strangely. One of the subadults refuses to eat. Another bites without provocation. Their grins are wider than usual, their eyes too bright. Hyenas are normally social, even playful in their brutality. But when rabies takes root, it dismantles the code of the clan. Mothers snarl at their own pups. Brothers turn into butchers. The infection doesn't kill instantly. It performs a slow, psychological assassination. And then there are the lions. When rabies infects a lion, the wilderness shivers. It is not just a tragedy, it is a shift in the hierarchy. The mighty become mad. The apex becomes unpredictable. There's a recorded case in Botswana where a male lion, infected and deranged, walked straight into a campfire in the middle of a human settlement. His roar was a garbled cough, his coat matted with saliva and blood. He didn't run from the flames, he walked through them, like a ghost with teeth. What rabies strips away is control. The parts of the brain that temper aggression, fear, logic, they dissolve into a primal chaos. The infected animal becomes hypersensitive to sound and movement. A twig snapping sends it into attack. A shadow across its eye invites blood. These aren't strategic attacks. They're spasms of violence, blind, vicious, and suicidal. The predator loses not just its mind, but its purpose. Hunting no longer feeds. Killing no longer satisfies. It lashes out at birds, trees, shadows, even its own reflection in still water. And yet, in a bizarre evolutionary twist, this madness serves a function. Rabies needs violence to spread. The more aggressive the host, the more likely it is to bite, and the more likely the virus is to pass on. It is a disease with a plan, not conscious, of course, but terrifyingly efficient. The very behavior that dooms the host is what keeps the virus alive. Nature, ever the genius of paradoxes, has found a way to turn insanity into strategy. Humans, too, are part of this story. In regions of East Africa, rabid wildlife doesn't just stay in the bush. Jackals stumble into villages. Hyenas froth at the edge of cattle pens. In rare, tragic cases, lions attack people not for food, but from pure derangement. Children bitten by infected dogs or mongoose can develop symptoms weeks later. Hydrophobia, hallucinations, the inability to swallow. Rabies is almost always fatal once it reaches the brain. Vaccines exist, yes, but access is another matter entirely. The boundary between wild and human isn't as solid as we like to imagine. Sometimes it's porous, sometimes it bites. In the animal kingdom, victims of rabies are rarely mourned. A lioness begins to behave oddly, pacing, growling, twitching, and she is quickly abandoned. Her pride senses the shift before symptoms bloom. Some scientists believe lions can detect illness through scent markers in the urine or pheromone changes in the skin. Others suspect it's purely behavioral. Either way, the group reacts with swift, silent exile. In nature, empathy is a luxury. Survival doesn't have time for sympathy. And here lies the cruel joke. Predators infected with rabies often die not from the virus directly, but from what it causes. Starvation, after biting prey they can't eat. Dehydration, because they've lost the instinct to drink. Fatal injuries during confused attacks. Even heat stroke after hours of frantic pacing under the sun. The virus doesn't kill with claws, it kills with confusion. Yet sometimes nature fights back. A curious observation has emerged in certain species. Bat-eared foxes, for instance, appear to have developed partial resistance in some areas. Whether through genetic adaptation or sheer exposure, a few individuals survive exposure without succumbing. It's not immunity, but it's a whisper of it, a reminder that evolution never stops watching, never stops adjusting. Even against madness, there is sometimes a slow, defiant dance toward resilience. The savannah is quiet now. The foam-lipped jackal has collapsed beneath a bush, twitching in his final throes. In the distance, a pair of vultures circle with slow reverence, as if waiting for the virus to fully finish its art. And behind them, unseen, another jackal moves through the brush. Healthy, sharp-eyed, and unaware that his next encounter may be the last one that makes sense. In a world where strength defines survival, rabies is the invisible joker in the deck. It plays by different rules. It laughs at size, mocks speed, and cares nothing for hierarchy. One bite can unravel generations of dominance. One scratch can turn a hunter into a howling spectre. In this chapter of the wild, the monsters aren't born. They're made, one nerve at a time. But the virus is only one shadow creeping through the bloodstream of Africa's greatest hunters. In the next chapter, we'll shrink even further, diving into the eerie realm of parasites, microscopic puppeteers that whisper instructions from inside their host's brain, bending willpower, erasing fear, and sometimes guiding their predators straight to death. The sky over the savannah simmers with heat, thick enough to blur the outlines of reality. A mirage ripples above the ground like breath from an invisible beast, and the land moves in strange rhythms. Antelope flicking their tails, oxpeckers dancing on hippobacks, and in the distance a lone hyena trudging a crooked line across the dust. But there is something unnatural in the way it moves. Its gait is too steady, too confident, as if drawn by an invisible leash toward danger it should know better than to face. Ahead, a lion pride sleeps in the shade, bellies full, tempers short. And yet the hyena walks on, eyes wide, tail twitching, lips trembling, not with fear, but with something far more bizarre: submission. To the casual observer, this would seem a death wish, but to a parasitologist, it's textbook. This is no ordinary predator. it's a puppet. Deep within its brain, nestled like a whisper between neurons, lurks a microscopic saboteur, Toxoplasma gondii, a single-celled parasite with neither teeth nor claws, yet with one of the most diabolical talents in the natural world, the ability to hijack behavior. Toxoplasma doesn't kill its host directly. That would be wasteful. Instead, it alters fear, disrupts judgment, and bends instincts in ways that seem laughably implausible, until you see it happening. Here in Africa, Toxoplasma finds many victims. Wild dogs suddenly lose their wariness, lag behind their packs, and stare too long at threats they should avoid. Hyenas, particularly young ones, seem drawn to lions like moths to flame, approaching too close too often. Some scientists believe the parasite manipulates dopamine levels, numbing fear and stimulating reckless curiosity. Others suspect it tweaks olfactory responses, flipping predator scent from threat to attraction. However it works, the outcome is chilling. Smart predators make stupid mistakes, and stupid mistakes get you killed. But Toxoplasma is only the opening act in the theater of brain parasites. Beyond it lies a hidden empire of worms, flukes, and microscopic tricksters that specialize in one thing: turning hosts into vehicles of their own survival. The flatworms known as trematodes, for instance, may be best known for infecting snails and ants, but some species have been found in African carnivores too, especially those that scavenge. These creatures burrow into the brain and eyes, sometimes causing partial blindness or disorientation. Lions afflicted with parasitic cysts have been seen attacking in broad daylight, misjudging distances, or abandoning perfectly viable prey mid-chase, as if second-guessing their own instincts. And while some parasites are quiet squatters, others throw a full-blown mutiny. Take Spirometra, a type of tapeworm that, when misdirected into the wrong host, say a leopard instead of a reptile, can migrate to the brain, where it forms larval cysts that swell and press against the skull from the inside. There are accounts, few but harrowing, of big cats found wandering aimlessly, tilting their heads, bumping into trees, as if drunk on some ghostly brew. This isn't rabies. There's no foam, no frenzy, just a slow erosion of self. The twisted brilliance of these invaders is that they don't need to kill quickly. In fact, they prefer not to. Every moment the host survives is another opportunity to pass the parasite along, to a mate, a cub, a scavenger, a human. The cycle of infection doesn't end with death. Often it just evolves. When an infected lion carcass is devoured by vultures or hyenas, the parasites get their next ticket to ride. When wild dogs feed on a decomposing impala that died of cerebral trematodes, the worm's next chapter begins. And while this might sound like science fiction, it is thoroughly, disturbingly real. In 2018, researchers in Botswana captured evidence of Toxoplasma seroprevalence in up to 75% of certain predator populations. That's not a fringe infection, that's a silent epidemic. And unlike viruses, parasites don't necessarily burn through populations. They linger. They infiltrate generations, slipping from mother to cub, predator to prey, like invisible shadows. Of course, nature doesn't always let this pass unchallenged. Some species seem to resist the brain hijackers. African wild dogs, despite occasional infections, often display remarkable neurological resilience, perhaps due to their genetic diversity or rapid breeding cycles. Hyena clans, ever the social scientists of the wild, have been observed subtly ostracizing members who behave wrong. Not aggressively, but with a cold indifference that speaks volumes. In the animal kingdom, even confusion has a scent. There is too a strange humor in how nature solves problems it created. Certain species of dung beetles feast on the droppings of infected animals, effectively scooping up millions of parasites before they can infect new hosts. An unlikely alliance, born not of compassion, but of digestive practicality. And yet, the dung beetle may be one of the savannah's most uncelebrated heroes, breaking the chain of infection with every hungry roll. Still, for many apex predators, the mind remains the most vulnerable battleground. Unlike bones that can heal or skin that can scar over, the brain doesn't forgive invaders. It twists in response, sometimes subtly, sometimes catastrophically. A lioness who forgets to guard her cubs. A leopard that forgets the path it's walked 100 times. A jackal that stands still when it should run. Each is a symptom of a deeper, quieter war being fought in the neural corridors of the wild. And all this raises a troubling thought. How many of nature's strangest behaviors are not instinct at all, but manipulation? How many sacrifices, wanderings, stumbles, and failed hunts were not acts of weakness or misjudgment, but symptoms of an unseen puppeteer. The predators we marvel at for their strength may be fragile in ways we can't yet measure. Not because of what they face outside, but what festers within. The infected hyena we saw earlier, it never reached the lions. It collapsed 30 feet from their paws, spasming in the dirt, jaws clenching at nothing. The lions didn't even look up. To them, the threat wasn't worth the curiosity. Sometimes, even killers can smell that death has already begun. But parasites don't stop with the brain. In the next chapter, we shift from the mind to the gut, from whispers in neurons to rotting lungs and hollow bellies. Not all killers are invisible. Some leave their mark in plain sight, as slow starvation, as breathless hunts, as coughing kings too weak to roar. The slow killers await. The wind runs dry over the savannah today, dragging brittle strands of grass in slow circles, lifting old scents from the earth, dung, decay, the sweet rot of fermenting fruit. Even the birds are quieter than usual, their songs reduced to cautious whistles, as though the air itself carries bad news. Under the shade of a dying marula tree, a cheetah lies motionless, ribs sharp against her thin skin, eyes half closed, not with sleep, but surrender. Her once proud silhouette, built for bursts of 60-mile-per-hour glory, now trembles when she shifts her weight. There is no visible wound, no blood, no battle scars, and yet she is dying all the same. Starvation is a strange fate for a predator. The mind recoils from the contradiction. How can a hunter, with sharp teeth and ancient instincts, perish from an empty stomach in a land teeming with prey? But nature, in its relentless inventiveness, doesn't always need a lion's roar or a leopard's leap to bring down its finest. Sometimes it sends a killer too small to see and waits for the silence to follow. Diseases like feline immunodeficiency virus, the feline cousin of HIV, don't need violence to destroy. They just need time. This cheetah is not merely hungry, she is infected. Her immune system, already fragile from a genetic bottleneck that has haunted the species since the last ice age, is under siege. Every breath is a gamble. Every bite, if she could take one, risks infection. Her muscles shrink, her energy fades. Her hunting attempts, when she musters them, end in failure. She's fast, yes, but not fast enough anymore. Speed is nothing without the stamina to chase or the strength to wrestle, and with her body breaking itself down from the inside, even her shadow begins to outrun her. Nearby, across a ridge lined with sun-cracked stones, another drama unfolds. A lion, once a pride male with a roar that shook the night, now limps alone. His mane, dull and thinning, clings to a face drawn and gaunt. His breath rattles with every exhale, carrying with it the ghosts of a dozen hunts and one lingering, deadly companion: tuberculosis. Most assume TB is a disease of humans, a product of crowded cities and damp prisons. But it haunts the wild too, slipping between species with quiet precision. In lions, it lodges deep in the lungs, eroding the very engine that powers the chase. What begins as a soft cough grows into wheezing spasms, blood in the mucus, and then something far worse: apathy. The lion no longer rises to defend a kill. He no longer competes for mating rights. He watches his reflection in puddles left from last week's storm and turns away, uninterested. The flame inside dims not with violence, but with a quiet resignation. His ribs begin to show, his claws dull from lack of use. Meat hangs on the air from nearby carcasses: zebra, antelope, even warthog. But they may as well be myths. He cannot chase them, and he knows it. There is a kind of tragedy here that outpaces the usual dramas of predator and prey. These are not falls from battle, they are disintegrations. The sick lion will not go out in a last stand. He will drift out of his own story, forgotten by the pride he once led, shunned by scavengers who sense the wrong kind of meat. Even hyenas, often mocked for their lack of culinary standards, turn their noses when the stench of disease clings too thickly to the dying. And yet this slow decay serves a dark ecological purpose. In this land, nothing is wasted. When predators grow too weak to kill, the balance tips in favor of the prey. Antelope herds swell, rodents flourish, grasslands breathe. It is in these shifting scales that ecosystems find their rhythm. A cheetah's death may mean a rabbit's survival. A lion's slow fade might give rise to a rival's reign. Starvation, cruel and undignified as it may be, is one of nature's oldest and most effective editors. Even still, some predators refuse to go quietly. There are cases documented and chilling of sick lions turning to humans for easier kills, seeking cattle or even wandering into villages. Not for power, but for ease. What they can't outrun, they try to outwit. And sometimes the desperation that disease breeds leads to innovation. In a bizarre twist of survival, some lions infected with TB have learned to scavenge with vultures, following the birds until they locate a weakened or already dead animal. They eat without pride, without glory. But they eat. Meanwhile, others adapt in quieter ways. Some female leopards infected with immunodeficiency viruses abandon their usual territories and move closer to human borders, where prey like domestic dogs or goats are less vigilant, slower, and far less organized than impala. But even this comes at a cost. The closer a predator moves to humans, the closer it flirts with death by rifle, snare, or retaliation. Disease narrows their options. Hunger turns them into gamblers, and the house always wins. There is a strange beauty in the resilience, even as it fails. Watching a dying cheetah lick its own failing limbs, or a lion chase a butterfly not out of hunger but distraction, one can't help but feel the quiet nobility in their endurance. These are not creatures built for slow deaths. They are built for explosions, for lunges, chases, ambushes. And yet, when the body betrays them, they adapt, however clumsily, for a while, until the stomach caves in, until the bones wear through the skin, until the chase becomes a memory they can no longer act out. And the most chilling part, you often don't know they're sick until the very end. Disease in the wild is not advertised. There are no splints or slings, no obvious wounds. It happens in whispers, slower reactions, longer rests, missed kills. Even the flies don't gather until the last stages. Death in these cases isn't a climax, it's a fade-out. Yet somewhere beyond the Thornveld, a new lion cub is born, wriggling into the warmth of the pride, its body still damp from birth, its lungs eager for air. Its genes will carry the stories of its ancestors, of hunts, of battles, and yes, of plagues. It may one day roar like the dying male who wheezes under the baobab tree. Or it may vanish before it's weaned, taken by one of the many silent killers that hide beneath the skin. Because in the wild, survival isn't about strength alone. It's about timing, it's about luck, it's about whether your body holds the line when something inside tries to tear it down. Next we turn to a different sense, the one that betrays long before the body does. In the lion pride, in the jackal clan, in the hyena pack, there's a scent. The scent of death before it arrives. When your own kind can smell your doom, what happens next is not always mercy. The savannah breathes through heat and silence, a land suspended between predator and prey, between stillness and violence. Somewhere in the golden sprawl, a pride of lions rests beneath the tangled shadows of a fever tree. Their bodies are pressed against each other in a living tapestry of fur and muscle, the way only lions sleep, together, sprawled and snoring, as if nothing could ever touch them. But at the edge of this royal sprawl lies a figure slightly apart. Her body faces the others, but no one touches her. She's close, but not close enough. Her name is not important. In lion society, names are irrelevant, but scent is everything. And right now, she smells wrong. In the animal kingdom, smell isn't just a sense, it's a language. A lion can read another's entire biography with a single whiff. What she ate, who she mated with, whether she's lactating, stressed, injured, or dying. And this lioness, once a vigorous mother and hunt leader, now carries a scent her pride doesn't understand, or rather, one they understand all too well. It seeps from her pores, clings to her mane, taints the earth she lies on. It is the scent of infection, the invisible ink of disease. Not fresh blood or open wounds, but something subtler, more insidious, an acrid, sour undertone that rides beneath her natural musk. This is the olfactory alarm bell of the savannah, the scent of slow death. A few days ago, she still fed beside the others, her muzzle deep in zebra flank, snarling through bone and tendon. Now, as the pride eats, she waits behind them, not out of deference, but because they won't let her close. Even the cubs, usually eager for any attention, avoid her. One approached her this morning, wobbling on new legs, but was yanked back by a low growl from its mother. Not an attack, just a warning. As though she carried a ghost the others didn't want near their young. The reason, scientists believe, lies in the chemical cues produced by the immune system itself. When a lion is sick, especially with internal infections like tuberculosis or bacterial sepsis, its body chemistry changes. Volatile organic compounds leak through sweat and breath, tiny scent signals that something is off. These aren't visible wounds or dramatic symptoms. No coughing fits, no dripping blood. But the scent does the talking. It tells the pride what their eyes cannot. And in the wild, that's all it takes to rewrite loyalty. For social predators like lions, cohesion is survival. Every hunt, every defense, every moment of shared sleep depends on trust and health. One weak link can compromise the whole. And so nature, ever pragmatic, has evolved a kind of instinctive ostracism. Not out of malice, but mathematics. One lioness infected could mean 3 more next week, especially if the illness is contagious. Better to cast her out now, before the whole pride inherits her decay. But the exile isn't always immediate. It begins in subtle steps. Fewer grooming sessions, less access to kills, a sudden scarcity of eye contact. She feels it before she understands it. The shared glances she once received now glide past her. No growls, no fights, just space. A slow orbit away from belonging. And with each hour that passes, the space grows wider. Yet this particular lioness doesn't go quietly. She lingers, shadows the pride at a distance, lies downwind to avoid being scented too strongly, still hoping that her presence will be tolerated just a little longer. She is not yet too weak to walk, not yet too far gone to hunt. She brings down a small warthog alone one evening, dragging it back toward the pride's scent trail, as if offering her continued usefulness. But they do not eat it. They smell her on the carcass and turn away. It is here that nature reveals one of its more uncomfortable paradoxes. Social animals depend on each other, but they also turn on each other. A pride that grooms and cuddles and hunts together will exile one of its own with icy precision if disease enters the picture. Not through choice, through evolution. This behavior isn't cruel, it's adaptive. In an ecosystem where survival is won molecule by molecule, scent becomes the first line of defense. And when scent betrays weakness, there are no second chances. Of course, this olfactory isolation isn't unique to lions. Wild dogs, those famously cooperative hunters, will also steer clear of pack members that smell wrong. Jackals have been observed avoiding mates that exhibit chemical changes linked to infection. Even hyenas, those rowdy eaters of everything, display caution when confronted with the scent of decay in a living body. The nose knows long before the eyes do. But lions are particularly dramatic in this regard because of how close they normally are. The physical intimacy of a pride, constant touch, shared kills, synchronized grooming, makes the absence of touch deafening. When a lioness becomes untouchable, she may as well have vanished already. The scent of illness doesn't just mark her as sick, it rewrites her role. From mother to threat, from hunter to liability, from queen to ghost. And still she stays close, perhaps out of habit, perhaps out of fading hope, or perhaps because she knows that to leave entirely is to sign her own death warrant. A lone lioness, especially one weakened, cannot hunt effectively or defend herself from rival predators. She has no cubs left, no sisters willing to lie beside her. Her only chance lies in proximity, on the off chance that the pride forgets, forgives, or falls sick themselves and evens the playing field. But the wild doesn't offer many reversals. The longer she remains ill, the more her body betrays her. Her scent intensifies. The sharp sweetness of health curdles into something metallic and bitter. Her urine carries a tang of pus. Her breath smells like damp fur left too long in the sun. And the flies, those winged readers of death, gather early, licking her eyes, tickling her sores, announcing what the pride already suspects. She will not recover. Some lionesses try to mask the scent, rolling in mud, licking obsessively, even rubbing themselves in the dung of herbivores in an unconscious attempt at disguise. But nature's chemistry is more persistent than desperation. The scent always returns. It seeps from within. And once exile becomes final, the real danger begins, not from enemies, but from time. Alone, without the coordination of the pride, her chances drop dramatically. She must hunt smaller prey, risk injuries without assistance, sleep with one eye open. And when she weakens too much to fight, there are others waiting. Hyenas, who were too cautious to attack when the pride stood united, now stalk her openly. They don't rush. They've seen this story before. They wait for gravity to finish what disease has started. But sometimes, very rarely, exile turns into evolution. A lioness recovers, the scent fades, the body stabilizes. Her immune system rallies quietly, without fanfare, and she returns, not to her original pride, who would still turn her away, but to a different one. A rogue male, a small splinter group, a chance encounter. She finds a new beginning, her history written only in scars, not in scent. It's rare, but it happens. The wild doesn't grant mercy, but it doesn't deny miracles either. As dusk spills like ink across the land, the lioness lifts her head, listening to the pride's distant calls. She doesn't answer. The wind has shifted. Her scent, no longer carried to them, floats elsewhere now, into the realm of scavengers, into the nostrils of jackals and vultures, into the next chapter of nature's slow, indifferent march. And in the dark, just beyond the scrubland, something moves, not sick, not dying, but predatory and alert. Because where one predator weakens, another rises. And when death has a smell, it's not just a warning, it's an invitation. At the edge of the floodplain, where Africa's sun boils the mud into a crust, and dragonflies skim the air like flickering sparks, a stillness lingers that feels more ancient than even the trees. This is the haunt of giants, not the trumpet-throated elephants or swaggering lions of the grasslands, but older creatures still, carved in the script of prehistory. Crocodiles, great slabs of scale and sinew, half submerged in the shallows like fallen statues of forgotten gods. Their eyes are still, nostrils just above the waterline, and beneath the surface they wait with the patience of time itself. For millennia they have ruled the rivers, ambush kings, living fossils. But even here, in their murky strongholds, decay has found its way in. The river looks clean to the untrained eye, glistening in the sun, thick with reeds and the hum of insects. But this is no Eden. Beneath the surface, a chemical ballet of filth and rot dances just out of sight. Wallowing hippos defecate by the ton, turning the water into a slurry of waste. Carcasses drift into side channels, bloated and leaking, feeding a soup of bacteria, parasites and fungal spores. And in these death pools, crocodiles do what they've always done. They lie in wait, sometimes for days, mouths open like grave doors, letting the river clean their teeth. Or so it seems. But the river has changed. Among the crocodiles of East Africa, cases have begun to emerge, silent, grotesque stories of disease seeping beneath the armor. A swollen jaw here, a milky eye there, then something more alarming. Flesh sloughing away from a forelimb, revealing bone. A jaw fused at the hinge by an unseen infection. Fungal blooms sprouting in lesions like ghostly barnacles. These aren't battle wounds. They're not the proud scars of dominance. They're rot, diseases born of filth and carried by wounds that never closed. Nature, ever opportunistic, has found a way to conquer even the unconquerable. The problem begins with the mouth. A crocodile's jaws are its currency. And in the chaos of feeding, when dozens lunge for the same kill, bites are common, not from prey, but from each other. In the frenzy, teeth rake across scales, tearing open flesh that's too slow to heal. Now mix that with stagnant water, rich in pathogens like Aeromonas hydrophylla, a bacterium known to cause red leg disease in amphibians and necrosis in fish, and crocodiles, it seems, are not immune. Once inside, the infection works fast, turning muscle to mush, swelling limbs, warping bone. There have been sightings, rare and unsettling, of crocodiles dragging themselves onto riverbanks with mouths locked shut by swollen tissue, incapable of feeding, doomed to starve beside the waters they once ruled. And yet they don't flee. Unlike lions or hyenas, crocodiles don't migrate to cleaner grounds when disease spreads. They are tied to the river like a secret to its whisper. Part of this is biology, their need for warm, shallow water to thermoregulate, to digest, to ambush. But part of it too is arrogance earned over 200 million years. They have seen ice ages and extinctions come and go. What's a little fungus? But nature has a cruel sense of irony. In times of drought, when the rivers retreat into foul, shrunken puddles, crocodiles are forced closer together. The water heats, the waste concentrates, The bacteria multiply, and suddenly the top predator becomes a host. Parasites like Contracacum, a type of nematode, burrow into organs, feeding on the liver and intestines. Others embed in the brain, causing disorientation, sluggish movement, even beaching behaviors. Crocodiles that once moved like ghosts through the reeds begin to drift sideways, twitching, sometimes even flipping in the shallows like dying fish. To a camera lens, it looks like madness. To science, it is a microbial mutiny. Even their famously tough skin, armor forged from evolution's finest obsessions, can't save them. Fungal infections like fusarium find cracks in the dermal scales, especially around old wounds or stress points. What begins as a soft patch becomes a crater, then a spreading plaque of rotting tissue. In humid riverbeds where oxygen runs thin and decay runs deep, the smell is unmistakable. A mixture of sulfur, meat, and stagnant algae, a warning to other crocodiles, not that they heed it. Yet there is no mourning here. Crocodile society does not pause to grieve. An infected croc becomes, in time, a floating carcass. And the same companions that once basked beside it now feed from it. Cannibalism is not rare, it's routine. Juveniles are often the victims, but the sick? They are easy pickings. And in feeding on their fallen kin, the healthy may unwittingly invite the same parasites into their own bodies, continuing the circle, tight as a noose. Still, some survive. The resilience of crocodiles is legendary and not without merit. Their immune systems are bizarrely robust, capable of healing massive wounds, even regrowing lost portions of tail and jaw over time. Studies have found compounds in crocodile blood with powerful antimicrobial properties, perhaps one reason they have lasted so long while bathing in bacterial soups. But the modern threats are evolving too. Pollution, climate shifts, shrinking habitats, all squeeze the margins tighter. The rivers are warmer now, the death pools forming sooner each year. Crocodiles haven't changed, but the river has. And the river, ultimately, decides. There's a dark twist to all of this. In some places, it's not just the crocodiles that suffer from the death pools. Cattle brought to the water's edge fall ill. Children who bathe in these stretches return home with fevers and parasites. The sickness doesn't end with the croc. It moves upstream into human lives, into headlines, into cautionary tales whispered around village fires. Disease, after all, doesn't care about species. It just follows the path of least resistance. As night rolls in, the river gleams black under the stars, its surface broken by silent ripples and the occasional glint of a reptilian eye. Somewhere downstream, something large and bloated bobs in the current. It could be a hippo. It could be a buffalo. But if you look closely, if you wait long enough for the current to turn just right, you'll see the unmistakable jawline of a crocodile. Once feared, now feasted upon. And so, the predator becomes prey, not to tooth or claw, but to the rot beneath the surface, to the things too small to see, but strong enough to kill a dinosaur. But as the river sleeps, other hunters stir. From the reeds and banks, the birds of the night awaken. And among them a different kind of killer waits, not one of muscle and armor, but of stealth, precision, and talons on the wind. Because in the next chapter, the sky itself becomes a hunting ground, and not even the sick can hide from raptors in the dark. The plains stretch endless in the afternoon heat, flat and golden as far as the eye can see, broken only by the swaying silhouettes of umbrella acacias and the glint of antelope horns in the distance. The grass murmurs beneath a whispering breeze, but the silence isn't stillness, it's tension. Somewhere just beyond sight, something watches, not from the shadows like a leopard, nor from the tall brush like a lion, but in plain daylight, moving with grace so smooth it almost erases its own motion. The cheetah. Built like a fever dream of speed, the cheetah doesn't sneak, it streaks. Limbs like springs, a spine that coils and releases like a whip, lungs wide as sails, and claws that never fully retract, gripping the earth like cleats on a sprinter's track. It is, by all outward appearances, the perfect predator, the Ferrari of the savannah. But as it stands there now, tail flicking, legs trembling, one begins to notice what the sleek profile hides. A shallow rise of the ribs, a faint wheeze in the breath, and something else, an itchiness, a flick of the ears, a scrape against the shoulder. There is discomfort, not in its run, but in its blood. The story of the cheetah's fragility is one of the cruelest tales evolution ever wrote. Because behind all that acceleration lies a body riddled with errors, a ghost of diversity. Tens of thousands of years ago, something happened. A genetic bottleneck, most likely caused by a dramatic climate event or mass extinction, squeezed the cheetah population so tightly that all individuals alive today descend from a mere handful of ancestors. And in that narrow funnel, much was lost. Resistance, variation, strength. What was left was a species so genetically uniform that even unrelated cheetahs can accept skin grafts from each other without rejection. A miracle to surgeons, a nightmare for immunity. This uniformity comes at a cost far steeper than mere curiosity. Their immune systems, already underpowered compared to other big cats, often fail to recognize threats. Viruses spread faster. Infections linger longer. Parasites gain ground before the body mounts a response, if it even tries at all. In one devastating example, the outbreak of feline infectious peritonitis in a captive cheetah population had a near 100% fatality rate. In lions, the same disease barely registered. And while this fragility might seem confined to zoos and labs, its consequences echo loudly in the wild. A slight cough in a cheetah is not just a cough, it's a warning sign, a signal flare that something deeper is broken. Their noses, oddly flattened by a lifetime of adaptation to high-speed chases, often host chronic sinus infections. Minor scrapes from thorns or prey kicks can swell into abscesses. Even their teeth, built for slicing, sometimes fail to erupt properly or break under strain. These are not isolated anomalies. They're symptoms of a genome stretched too thin to carry its own weight. And the problems don't stop with disease. Reproduction, the engine of any species' survival, has also been compromised. Male cheetahs often suffer from low sperm counts and malformed sperm cells, some coiled, some headless, many useless. Mating is no guarantee of offspring, and even when cubs are born, they face an uphill battle. In the wild, up to 90% of cheetah cubs die before reaching adulthood, many due to infections that a sturdier immune system might easily fight off. For a species that already walks the edge of extinction, these numbers are less a statistic and more a slow-motion collapse. Yet somehow, they endure. There's something almost defiant about the cheetah's persistence, its refusal to vanish despite the odds. And it's not without its strange quirks. While their immune systems may be weak, cheetahs compensate with obsessive hygiene. They groom constantly, sometimes to the point of rawness, their tongues rasping across wounds, fur, and even other members of a coalition in an effort to scrape away the microscopic threats their blood won't fight. It's a bit like building a sandcastle to stop the tide. Futile, yes, but determined. Still, the real tragedy may lie in how evolution sharpened one part of their design so finely that it neglected the rest. Speed came at a cost. Their claws are semi-retractable for traction, but this leaves them more vulnerable to infection from soil-borne pathogens. Their thin frames are aerodynamic but offer little fat reserve, making them sensitive to illness and environmental stress. Their solitary nature keeps them safe from territorial fights, but also isolates them from the kind of social grooming and care that lions or wild dogs use to buffer against disease. They are built for the chase, but not for the recovery. Even their hunting strategy is a gamble. A single chase drains enormous energy. If the cheetah succeeds, it eats fast, always fast, because it knows larger predators are coming. But if it's slightly ill, if its lungs are off by a few percent, if its muscles cramp from dehydration, it won't finish the sprint. And when a cheetah fails to feed, it doesn't have the reserves of a lion or the teamwork of wild dogs. It simply starves. Yet there is an unexpected twist in this story. Despite all their flaws, cheetahs are not giving up. Conservationists have noticed behaviors that suggest a kind of instinctual adaptation. Some coalitions of males team up not just for territory, but seemingly to monitor each other's health. In parts of Namibia, cheetahs have been observed avoiding certain waterholes known to harbor high parasite loads, as if learning from generational memory. And in the genetic data, there are faint glimmers of diversity slowly creeping back in, evidence of a species trying to reboot its own code one cub at a time. But time, as always, is the enemy. With fewer than 7,000 cheetahs left in the wild, every illness counts. Every infection, every miscarriage, every cough in the night could be the beginning of the end. They do not go down roaring like lions or howling like wolves. Their extinction, if it comes, will be a whisper, an elegant, silent fade into history, fast until the very end. And yet not all genetic nightmares stay confined to the cheetah. In the next chapter we move to the scavengers, the bone crushers, the laughers of the night, hyenas. Animals built to digest death, but even they have a line that disease dares not cross. Because sometimes when you eat everything, it eats back. Evening descends with a burnt orange glow that smears across the African sky like spilled paint. The heat of the day simmers off the earth in faint ripples, and as the sun's final light brushes the grassland's gold, another world wakes. A chorus begins, low whoops rising from the shadows, laughter with no joy behind it, just echoing hunger. The hyenas have arrived. Not sneaking, not tiptoeing like polite predators, but striding, shoulders hunched, heads low, ears twitching like antennae. There is something unapologetic about the way they move, as if they know the world disapproves but cannot deny their usefulness. And indeed, the ecosystem owes them more than it admits. They are the recyclers, the janitors of death, nature's final stage crew. Bones, hide, dung, rotting flesh still clinging to cracked ribs, nothing is beneath them. But when you feast on decay, you dine at the table of microscopic assassins. Tonight they find it quickly, a wildebeest, half submerged in a drying pool, its eyes already taken by vultures. The stench is thick, cloying and sweet, like spoiled meat left in a sunlit car. Most predators would turn away, noses curled, instincts recoiling, but the hyenas dive in. Jaws like hydraulic presses crunch through femur. A rib cage disappears in minutes. Their powerful stomach acid, 10 times stronger than a human's, can dissolve bone like a blender liquefies ice. It's impressive, terrifying even. But what lurks in this putrid buffet is no mere challenge of digestion. It's a gauntlet of death. Among the most infamous threats is Bacillus anthracis, the bacterium behind anthrax. Invisible, durable and deadly, its spores can linger in soil for decades, waiting for a grazer to disturb them or a scavenger to sniff too closely. Once ingested, it races through the bloodstream, releasing toxins that collapse organs and turn blood into black sludge. And hyenas, with their brave gullets and cast-iron bellies, aren't immune. While they may have evolved to handle rot, they are not armored against everything. Anthrax, when it strikes, moves fast. Some hyenas have been seen foaming at the mouth within hours of feasting, collapsing mid-stride, their laughter silenced mid-whoop. But anthrax isn't the only assassin lurking in the banquet. Clostridium botulinum, the bacterium responsible for botulism, is even sneakier. It thrives in anaerobic environments, like the intestines of bloated carcasses or the inside of decaying marrow. Its toxin is the most potent known to science. One bite of contaminated tissue is enough to paralyze the nervous system. First, the hind legs fail, then the jaw sags, then the lungs forget how to breathe. It is not a dramatic death, it is quiet. The hyena simply slumps down beside its feast, jaws still wet, eyes wide in disbelief that the very food it conquered is now claiming its life. Ironically, the same digestive superpowers that let hyenas consume what others cannot are also their curse. Their gut flora, rich and complex, can harbor bacterial stowaways that remain dormant until the host is stressed, injured, or starved. Opportunistic pathogens, like Salmonella or E. coli, can explode in such moments, turning the hyena's own digestive tract into a battlefield. Diarrhea in the bush is not just uncomfortable, it's a death sentence. It dehydrates, it weakens, it invites infection. And in hyena clans, weakness smells. Because, despite their reputation as loners, hyenas live in remarkably complex societies, matriarchal, political, and deeply sensitive to status. A sick hyena drops in rank almost immediately. Others notice the limping gait, the slower reactions, the sour change in scent. Dominant females, often larger and more aggressive than the males, will deny food, chase the weak from kills, and sometimes, if food is scarce, turn their teeth on their own. The clan is not a family. It is a hierarchy maintained with teeth and timing. Yet hyenas are not entirely helpless. They've developed a few biological tricks. Their highly acidic stomachs neutralize many pathogens before they spread. Their saliva carries antimicrobial enzymes. And their habit of scent marking with paste from their anal glands, while unfortunate for those downwind, might also signal microbial health. Researchers have begun to notice that sick hyenas mark less often, or their paste smells differently. a chemical signal of infection even before physical symptoms appear. In the wild, even your backside tells a story. Sometimes nature offers its most chilling twist in the form of cannibalism. A hyena, dying of an unseen infection, wanders too close to a kill, too slow to resist, too weak to run. The clan circles, sniffs, hesitates, and then feeds, not out of cruelty but conservation. In a world where meat is currency, even a fallen clan member is a deposit. But this is where disease plays its most ironic card. The act of feeding may spread the very illness that caused the death. A parasite carried in blood, a spore caught in a tooth, and thus the rot moves from one iron stomach to the next, cloaked in loyalty. Still, the story is not all doom. Some hyenas survive what should kill them. Their immune systems, though constantly under siege, are adaptable. There are cases of hyenas recovering from anthrax exposure, limping for weeks, only to return to the clan scarred but alive. Their bodies remember. Their blood adapts. It is not perfect, but it is persistent. And persistence in the wild often matters more than strength. And even among the diseased, life finds strange rhythms. One necropsy of a hyena that died during a drought revealed something remarkable. Botulism had paralyzed its gut, but its stomach was still full. The kill it had stolen days before was intact. Had it not eaten that specific carcass, it may have lived. But had it not eaten, it would have starved. Nature deals these cards often, no good choice, only faster or slower ends. As dawn bleeds into the horizon and the clan moves on, the bones of the wildebeest lie clean and hollow, picked spotless by jaws too efficient for their own safety. And somewhere behind the line of march, a juvenile lags, limping, drooling, pausing to retch. The others do not wait. In hyena society, loyalty lasts only as long as the smell of strength. But the winds carry more than decay. They carry feathers now, shadowy outlines against the pink sky. Because not all scavengers walk. Some soar. And some of them don't wait for the dead. They make the first move. In the next chapter, we rise above the rot and filth into the open sky, where raptors rule with talons sharp and eyes keener than disease. But even the air has its predators, and even vultures have a limit to what they dare eat. In the stillness of dawn, before the first rooster crows and before goats rustle in their pens, a village on the edge of the savannah breathes in peace it doesn't know is about to end. The air is cool, almost sweet, with the scent of charcoal ash, dry grass, and the faint trace of cow dung, so normal, so ordinary, that it offers no hint of the predator that passed through in the night. Yet just outside the perimeter fence, in the dust where sandals and paw prints sometimes blur together, lies something different this morning. A single bloody drag mark, a half-eaten dog, and paw prints larger than they should be, leading away from the village, but not far. Somewhere beyond the acacia thickets, a lion coughs. This is not the roar of cinema, not the mighty declaration of a beast claiming the land. It is shallow, wet, sick. The lion, leaner than he should be, breathes with difficulty, his flanks rising unevenly. His face is gaunt, his breath tainted with the iron tang of internal decay. This is a lion with tuberculosis, and the disease that is hollowing his lungs could very well be yours. Zoonotic diseases, those that leap from animals to humans, are not a hypothetical menace, nor a distant threat waiting in the wings. They are here, and when apex predators fall ill, the danger doesn't stop at tooth and claw. It walks on two legs, it crosses fences, it touches hands and mouths and lungs. The savannah, for all its majesty, has never respected borders. Tuberculosis in lions is especially sinister because it's subtle. Caused by Mycobacterium bovis, a close cousin of the human strain, it spreads through saliva, through breath, through blood. Infected lions may live for years, coughing into watering holes, leaving spittle on carcasses shared with scavengers or stolen by villagers. It spreads not in roars but in droplets, tiny, invisible seeds of contagion floating from whiskers to wind. In regions like South Africa's Kruger National Park, up to 80% of lions in some areas have tested positive, and once it spills over into cattle, the path to humans is paved with milk, meat, and handling, daily life, in other words. But perhaps more terrifying is rabies. Its name alone carries ancient fear, a legacy of madness and saliva, of animals turned berserk and foam-lipped. And while jackals and mongooses are common carriers, Lions, hyenas, and leopards occasionally join the ranks. A single bite from a rabid predator transforms not just its prey, but the entire community it touches. There are stories, real and recent, of lions walking into villages in broad daylight, not to stalk, but to lash out, biting dogs, charging children, attacking livestock without purpose. Rabies turns nature's logic upside down. Prey becomes meaningless. The predator becomes a vector. And the disease, once in the human body, is nearly always fatal. Unless treatment begins before symptoms appear, there is no cure. Fear spreads faster than the virus. In some areas, children are taught to flee from any wild animal behaving too brave or too friendly. A monkey approaching without fear, a jackal walking toward the firelight. These are not blessings, they are warnings in fur. But disease doesn't always arrive with teeth. Sometimes it rides in on wind, dust, or shared water. In parts of Tanzania and Kenya, anthrax outbreaks, sparked by grazing animals eating spore-contaminated soil, have spread through predator carcasses left unburned. Lions or hyenas that consume tainted meat can die in days, their bodies bloating and bleeding from every orifice. And yet scavengers come, then villagers seeking meat or hide or bone. There have been recorded cases of entire families falling ill after unknowingly handling a lion carcass that had died of anthrax. In a place where protein is scarce and poverty is abundant, even a dead predator is seen as bounty. Disease does not care for hunger. It feeds on it. Ironically, it is often the predators most feared for their claws and fangs that are least dangerous, until they're sick. A healthy leopard avoids humans. A rabid one hunts them. A healthy lion won't waste effort on goats behind a fence. A sick one, too weak to chase wildebeest, might try. This is where the line blurs between wild and domestic, between wilderness and home. Villagers speak of lions that seem to watch without blinking, of hyenas that approach fires but never run, of leopards found dead beside huts, their gums black with blood. The old stories say these are spirits. The truth is worse. These are animals caught in the grip of diseases that no longer recognize species. And still, humans play their part in the cycle. Encroachment into wild spaces, bushmeat hunting, and unregulated animal handling blur the boundary even further. A predator carcass dumped near a village becomes a laboratory of infection. A skin carried to market still carries spores. A fang made into a charm may carry bacteria. The jungle, once vast and isolating, is shrinking. And with every shrinking acre, the chances of a leap grow. Yet for all this horror, there is humor, dark and strange but present. In one infamous incident, a baboon troop raided a village latrine, spreading used toilet paper throughout a nearby field. Weeks later, a local lion, infected with a human gastrointestinal parasite, was found vomiting and lethargic, a rare case of a predator catching a human disease through indirect contact. A comic twist, perhaps, until you remember the lion wandered into a schoolyard before it collapsed. But nature, ever complex, is not purely malevolent. There are moments of balance. Some communities have begun to burn predator carcasses immediately. Others install watering stations for livestock far from wild sources, reducing the overlap. Education spreads slowly, but it spreads. And in a strange way, the threat of zoonotic diseases has deepened the respect many communities feel for the wild. Not fear, awareness. A knowledge that in the great interconnected web of life and death, even the strongest fall, and their fall can shake more than the ground. As night returns to the savannah, the village sleeps lightly, doors barred, fires smoldering low. In the distance, a lion coughs again, one last breath lost to the darkness. No one sees him die. But somewhere, days from now, someone will feel the fever, the aches, the weight of something old and wild working its way through the bloodstream. Because in this story, the end of a predator is not always the end of the threat. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a new kind of hunt. And as we move into our final chapter, we return to the wilderness itself, to the balance of life and death, to how the fall of the mighty doesn't always end in silence. Because in nature, every death leaves a vacancy, and every predator lost invites another to take its place. The sun breaks over the savannah, not with fanfare, but with the quiet, golden certainty of something ancient. Shadows stretch long over dew-drenched grass, and the trees, those crooked spectators of survival, begin to whisper in the wind. From a distance, all appears in perfect balance. Antelope graze in lazy clusters, birds trill in rhythmic cadence, and the low rustle of movement beneath the thorn bush hints at something watching, something hunting. But what the eye cannot see is the vacancy, a silence left behind, a shift in power. Somewhere, a lion that once ruled this corner of the world is gone, not because of a rival, not from a fight, but from something far less cinematic. A fever, a cough, a wound gone bad. And in his absence, the gears of the food chain begin to turn in strange, unexpected ways. The death of a predator is never a quiet event, even when it leaves no splash of blood on the grass. When the top of the pyramid falters, every rung beneath it trembles. Lions keep hyena numbers in check, not through slaughter, but through dominance, through territory, through the scent of strength. When a pride collapses under disease, be it tuberculosis, feline immunodeficiency, or rabies, there is no war horn, no dramatic siege. There is simply a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. Hyenas are often the first to notice. Opportunistic by design, they slip into abandoned lion lands with ears perked and noses twitching. In the weeks following a pride's silent demise, a hyena clan will expand their range, test new watering holes, even raid dens once off limits. Their laughter grows louder, their confidence swells. With fewer lions to steal their kills or police their movements, their success rate spikes. Cubs once malnourished now grow strong. A new generation rises, born not from victory, but from absence. Elsewhere, the death of a leopard, a creature so solitary its disappearance is rarely witnessed, opens strange doors. Leopards are shadow rulers, regulating smaller predators through presence alone. When disease claims them, their territories become ghost towns, and soon jackals, caracals, and even honey badgers begin to test the old trails. But the most dramatic replacement comes from the wild dogs. Highly social, brilliantly tactical, and always hungry, African wild dogs are quick to notice when a silent predator no longer patrols the trees. They move in, not out of conquest, but because they can. Kills increase. Pup survival skyrockets. Their songs, eerie and high-pitched, echo through valleys once owned by spotted ghosts. It's a paradox rarely appreciated. Disease in predators can lead to population booms in prey, zebra, wildebeest, impala, who now graze in relative peace. But this peace is fleeting. As prey numbers swell, so too does pressure on vegetation. Overgrazing begins, water sources erode, and soon starvation looms. Not for predators this time, but for the herds. What looked like a mercy becomes a slow spiral downward. Disease removes the lion's absence feeds the impala. The impala feed too much. The land suffers. The chain, once sleek and hidden, rattles. But the most unexpected players in this reshuffling often aren't predators or prey at all. They're scavengers. Vultures, often dismissed as the janitors of the sky, thrive when disease claims the mighty. A dead lion is a feast. A pride weakened by illness leaves behind scraps and unfinished kills. And more than once, these scraps have included diseased carcasses that even hyenas refused. But vultures, immune to most pathogens, revel in the rot. Their numbers swell, their shadows grow thick over the plains. And their droppings, rich in nitrogen, reshape the soil, fertilizing in death what life had once grazed. And then, of course, there is the return of species long held at bay. In regions where large carnivores falter, species like baboons expand, not just in number but in boldness. Without leopards to police the trees, baboons grow larger, more aggressive, and, ironically, become minor predators themselves, raiding bird nests, killing small antelope fawns, even threatening livestock. Nature doesn't wait politely for a role to be filled, it improvises. But not all replacements are natural. In areas where disease decimates predator populations, humans step in, intentionally or not. Cattle roam where lions once stalked. Poachers follow paths once cleared by leopard paws, and as the wild empties, it doesn't stay empty for long. The human footprint creeps in, not as predator, but as consumer, reshaper, and too often, oblivious invader. When apex predators vanish from disease, the line between wilderness and village erodes. The consequences ripple outward, not in roars, but in crop raids, in livestock kills, in zoonotic spillovers. Even scavengers have their limits. When diseases become too potent, when anthrax or botulism turns the land toxic, vultures avoid the kill. Hyenas hesitate. Jackals vanish. What remains is a kind of silence, a morbid lull in the music of the ecosystem. For all their stomachs of iron, Even nature's hungriest have lines they won't cross. These moments, rare but real, remind us that not all deaths feed. Some simply rot. And in that rot, something else stirs. Because eventually new predators emerge. Not always stronger, not always faster, but better timed. A new male lion may move into an empty territory, drawn by the scent of lionesses with no protector. A young leopard, formerly crowded out, now carves his own niche along the riverbank. These arrivals are not just rebirths, they are resets. New genes, new behaviors, new risks. Disease doesn't end stories, it edits them. In this final twist of fate, the same virus that brings a king to his knees may open the door to a successor better suited to the changing world. One more resistant, more cautious, or just luckier. Evolution, after all, is not a prize for the strong, it is a reward for the survivors. As the light fades once again over the plains, the wind carries no roar, no whoop, no shriek, but it carries the memory of all three. Disease is not the predator we see. It's the one that lingers in the breath, in the blood, in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. And yet, even in death, life finds a way to press forward. Because in nature's drama, there is no final curtain, only shifting roles, and the silent, invisible hand of disease, always ready to write the next act.